Excellent. Thank you, Cole. Thank you for your help in helping me to navigate that. And thank you, Hayek, and to Mass Peace Action, and to all of the groups for inviting me here today. You've done incredible work this year promoting a progressive vision for a better America and for a better world. And we just have to keep fighting. We needed you more than ever this year, and your message became a mandate here in Massachusetts for bold and brave solutions to our greatest challenges. And I know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will work to reverse the damage of the Trump administration and implement progressive policies at home and abroad. We must stand ready as partners to help put in place over the next 4 years the policies that respond to the scope of the problems which we face. I know the discussions you've been having about the progressive vision of 2021 will be comprehensive, and I'm so pleased to be able to contribute my thoughts on some of the most important challenges facing our country and the world. We just have to work together. And so at the top of the list are the existential threats of the climate crisis and nuclear Armageddon, as well as the global coronavirus pandemic. We see from these intersecting crises that no vision or plan can be too ambitious. To tackle three major challenges that humanity collectively faces, we have to first correct Trump's mistakes in responding to these crises, and then move forward with a strong progressive vision to achieve our goals. Trump's response to the climate agreement that Barack Obama had negotiated was to just back out of that agreement. And his reaction to the coronavirus pandemic that has infected millions of Americans was to withdraw from the World Health Organization. And Trump casually tossed aside bedrock agreements that reduce the threat of nuclear war. There was no crisis that Donald Trump didn't make worse over the last 4 years. We know that erecting border walls won't stop the spread of pandemics. We know that building missile defenses and new, more usable nuclear weapon systems will not create true security or peace. We know that calling the climate crisis a hoax will not save American coastlines or stop the West from burning or prevent the creation of a generation of climate refugees across the planet. Each of these 21st century challenges have brought to the surface systemic inequities that progressive policies must seek to right. Black, brown, immigrant, LGBTI, and other marginalized communities have borne the brunt of both the pandemic and the climate crisis. And we must do something about it. And let's be honest, the Alaskan Natives, Indigenous, and downwinder communities in the American Southwest are still suffering radiation sicknesses, a painful legacy of decades of US nuclear weapons testing. None of these grave challenges have stopped bands of committed volunteers at food banks and pantries, including the wonderfully named Boston Food Not Bombs, from handing out meals. Today, 1 in 5 children in the Bay State and 1 in 4 in the world will go to bed hungry. These challenges have not stopped frontline hospital workers at Beth Israel and Shriners in Springfield from 12-hour hospital shifts. They do so knowing they must protect their own families if they were to come down with the same virus that afflicts their patients. This past year has shown us that there are not only 2 Americas, but there are also 2 worlds consisting of the haves and the have-nots. Developing countries lack of the same access to testing and personal protective equipment and coronavirus therapies as wealthier countries are able to have them for their residents. these countries also risk being told to wait at the end of the line for a COVID-19 vaccine. In March, I call for a whole of government, wartime scale mobilization to help our most vulnerable here at home and contain the virus spread around the world. I was the first in the Senate to call on Trump to fully utilize the Defense Production Act to manufacture the personal protective equipment, the medical equipment, and all of the resources we need to fight this viral enemy. We now need a global Marshall Plan to help the world recover from a once-in-a-century global pandemic and to help countries become more resilient to climate shocks. President Biden has made it very clear that he wants to build back better at home and abroad as we adopt progressive solutions. And we must also build back bolder and brighter and bigger. The new global Marshall Plan will help address the immediate needs and reduce the toll of the disruptive impact of future crises that spill across borders. Lost in the sobering cost of the COVID-19 pandemic is that infection rates of other deadly diseases, from cholera to tuberculosis, are rising. Yet our Pentagon budget sits at a staggering $740 billion. That's more than the next 11 largest militaries combined. Compare that with our measly investment, 1/70th of that amount in global health. We would rather fund defense in the United States than the defenseless, and that must change. Throwing $750 billion each year to the Pentagon did not protect us from one of the gravest threats to national security we have encountered as a country, the coronavirus. It is time to prioritize the health of our planet, of our people, over surplus planes and tanks and warheads and missiles. We can do that with a robust American commitment of at least $20 billion for international assistance and a renewed focus on global cooperation to overcome this pandemic. President-elect Biden once said, "Don't show me what you value, show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value." He's right. Together, we have a chance to show that we value Medicaid over missiles, that we prioritize education, not annihilation, that we value creating health, not simply creating wealth. The World Health Organization plays a key role in coordinating these activities. That's why it was lunacy for President Trump to withdraw the United States, giving China an even larger influence in that body. President Biden, who promised to re-enter the WHO, and I know that he will lead other international efforts to strengthen the health of all nations as well. And just as the Marshall Plan's soft power won America hearts and minds, a commitment by America to also fight for marginalized communities, to fight the pandemic and to fight the climate chaos is absolutely essential. A starting point for that is raising the refugee resettlement ceiling from the lowest in history under the Trump administration at 18,000 every year. And he wanted to bring it down to 0. And we should just lift it up to a minimum of 100,000 people a year we're allowing as refugees to come into the country. We have to open our arms, not simply to those fleeing political and religious oppression, but those displaced by the climate crisis. Passage of my GRACE Act, which Joe Biden included in his campaign's immigration plan, and my Climate Displaced Persons Act will do just that. It will signal to the world that the Biden administration will move fast to pick up the pieces after Trump's 4-year wrecking ball to America's global leadership. Nowhere has the American absence that had more of a profound impact than the cause of moral leadership and a commitment to the values enshrined in the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. Authoritarian leaders from Manila to Minsk have used the COVID-19 pandemic to declare emergencies and enact laws to consolidate their grip on power and to clamp down on freedoms at home. We must reestablish American moral leadership and push ourselves, our allies, in all countries to recommit to an international system based on universal values where diplomacy, not war, is the primary driver. We cannot have a successful, progressive foreign policy without international cooperation, and we cannot have real cooperation unless our international institutions and all of the cooperation that goes with that and the values upon which they are founded are strong. I'd like for a moment to focus on one set of issues that has been very important to me. The LGBTI rights issues, like the rights of so many under Trump, have been brutally undermined. And luckily, we know that President-elect Biden embraces the LGBTI community at home and abroad. The rainbow pride flag will once again fly in front of every US embassy in the world. And the White House will be lit aglow during June Pride Month. And I look forward to President-elect Biden naming an LGBTI envoy to send the unmistakable message: America is back, and so is its commitment to the LGBTI rights community. I first introduced legislation in 2014 to make that LGBTI envoy a permanent position, and I'm going to continue to fight to show the world that if the United States is committed to LGBTI right here, we must be committed to it everywhere. The United States is also readying to close the chapter on Donald Trump's fealty to fossil fuels and corporate polluters. We have to rejoin the Paris Agreement. Naming John Kerry as his international envoy is an excellent move. It will ensure that he has a seat, that climate has a seat at the National Security Council, and that we're going to use our entire government in order to organize to make sure that the climate is in the Situation Room for every single issue, and that we're going back into the Paris Agreement. We know that we can do this. We know that we can unleash wind and solar and all electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids. We know that we can create millions of new jobs. We know that we can put frontline communities at the front of the line in order to make sure that they are given opportunities that reflect the fact that black and brown families have always breathed different air than white suburban families. So this is something that has young people who want to be in the leadership. And Hayek, you said it, talking about your granddaughter. They mobilized, they fought, and they're going to save us. We have to make sure that we fight to ensure that the political will is there in order to guarantee that we get this job done. And similarly, we need to make sure that we do the same thing on the coronavirus pandemic globally, and we also have to deal with the deadly risk posed by nuclear weapons. So here's a game plan to make a difference. First, progressives should continue to push for the United States to immediately re-enter the Joint Comprehensive Action Plan with Iran on nuclear weapons. That Obama-era agreement did its job of verifiably preventing a 10th nuclear weapon country and lowering tensions with Iran. Second,
Senator, you have 1 minute.
President-elect Biden has all of 15 days to extend the New START treaty for 5 years with Russia, which he will do. It will ensure that we do not have to watch the 20th century arms race become a 21st 21st century one. And finally, my HALT Act lays out a blueprint for a 21st century nuclear freeze movement to end the existential threat of nuclear weapons. It says we should get serious about bringing into force the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty and to negotiate a treaty on fissile material. So all of this must happen. Cynics say you can't do it, but we know that if we work together, we can accomplish all of these goals. Thank you all so much, every one of the groups that are on this call, for all of the work that you have done and you are doing today in order to make our country and world a better place. Thank you.